The call came at 8:17 in the morning, right in that dead, gray stretch of day when the sun is technically up, but everything still feels half asleep and slightly unreal. My coffee had already gone cold beside me. I was sitting at the kitchen table in my apartment, staring out at the wet parking lot below after a night of hard rain, trying to convince myself to answer emails when my phone started vibrating against the wood. Unknown number, local area code. I almost ignored it. I'd been getting too many calls lately from numbers I didn't know, and every one of them seemed to belong to someone selling something, confirming something I never asked for, or trying to sound urgent enough to get me to say yes before my brain caught up. But something about that call made me look at it 1 second longer than usual. Not fear exactly, more like a quiet instinct that said this wasn't random. I picked up on the fourth ring. Hello? The woman on the other end sounded cheerful in that controlled, professional way people do when they spend all day speaking to anxious customers. Good morning. This is Lakeview Veterinary Clinic. I'm just calling to confirm Mr. Biscuit's surgery for today at 10:30. He hasn't had any food since midnight, correct? For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. I looked at the phone screen, then out the window again, as if one of those would explain what she'd just said. I'm sorry, I said. Whose surgery? Mr. Biscuit, she repeated smoothly. Your cat. He's scheduled for neuter surgery this morning, along with pre-op blood work. We just need verbal confirmation that you're still bringing him in. I actually laughed once, but it came out wrong, dry and confused. I don't have a cat. There was a pause on her end, short but noticeable. The kind of pause that means the person across from you has stopped moving on autopilot and is now paying close attention. All right, she said carefully. Let me confirm I have the correct chart. Is this Anna Vorontsova? The laugh disappeared. Yes. Another pause, longer this time. I heard keyboard clicks, paper shifting, voices in the background, someone asking for a chart number. It was too much activity for a simple wrong number. When she came back, her tone had changed. Still polite, but now edged with caution. The chart lists this number as the primary contact, she said, and it also lists your address. The room seemed to go colder around me. What address? She read it out. My full address. Building number, apartment number, no hesitation, no mistake. My fingers tightened around the phone. Listen to me carefully, I said. I have never owned a cat. I never made an appointment with your clinic. I don't know what Mr. Biscuit is, and I definitely didn't schedule surgery for him. I expected her to apologize then. I expected an awkward correction, a small laugh, the kind of easy, unraveling normal misunderstandings have. Instead, she said, There's also a note in the chart. Her voice dipped slightly, as though she was reading something she didn't fully understand. It says the owner can be anxious and may try to cancel at the last minute, so it's important to call and confirm the morning of surgery. I sat up straighter without even realizing it. What? She continued, more uncertain now. It also says the cat hides under the bathtub when stressed and may need to be coaxed out with treats before transport. I looked slowly toward my bathroom door. The old clawfoot tub in there had a wide gap beneath it where dust gathered and nothing else. Nothing living had ever hidden under it because nothing living but me had ever lived in that apartment. I felt that first clean line of fear move through me then, cold and exact. Who brought this cat to your clinic? I asked. I'm sorry, I can't discuss the file in detail over the phone without proper verification, she said, but she no longer sounded confident. She sounded like she was standing at the edge of something she wished she hadn't stepped into. But the email, phone number, and address all match your information. Tell me the email address. She hesitated, then read it aloud. It was mine. Not similar, not old, not a typo. Mine. My actual inbox. The one I used for work, bills, and everything important. I turned to my laptop on the table, opened it with one hand, and started searching my inbox while still holding the phone. Nothing from Lakeview, nothing under veterinary, nothing under appointment, nothing under biscuit, no confirmation emails, no intake forms, no reminders. I checked spam, trash, archive. Empty. I have never received anything from your clinic, I said. Then I don't know why it isn't in your inbox, she replied, but I can see notes that online forms were completed 2 days ago. 2 days ago. I had been home 2 days ago. I had ordered groceries, answered messages, watched half a documentary, and fallen asleep on the couch. I had not, at any point, invented a cat. Did someone sign anything? I asked. Yes, she said quietly. There's a digital signature on the intake consent. The word signature changed everything. Confusion became focus. I'm coming in, I said. Good, she answered, sounding more relieved than she should have. Bring identification. The front desk can review the chart with you in person. I ended the call and sat completely still for a few seconds, listening to the muted hum of the refrigerator and the rainwater dripping from the edge of the balcony outside. The apartment felt wrong all of a sudden, not because anything had changed, but because something had entered it without physically entering at all. My name, my address, my email, my phone number. Someone had taken the shape of me and used it somewhere else. I searched my inbox again more carefully, this time by date, and still found nothing. That meant one of two things. Either the clinic never sent email confirmations, or someone had access to my email and deleted them. That thought hit hard enough to make my mouth go dry. I changed my email password immediately, then my bank password, then my primary social account, then I checked login history where I could. Nothing obviously wrong, but that didn't calm me down. People always imagine identity theft arrives dramatically, with drained accounts and fraud alerts and police reports, but sometimes it starts with something absurd enough that you almost don't take it seriously. A phone call about a cat you've never had, a surgery you never scheduled, a detail about your bathroom that no stranger should know. I got dressed faster than I meant to, pulling on jeans and a sweater with clumsy hands, then stopped halfway to the door and went back for my folder of documents. Lease copy, ID utility bill. Not because I thought a veterinary clinic would need proof of residence, but because something in me had already moved past the call itself. I didn't think I was going to argue over a pet appointment. I thought I was walking into evidence. The drive to the clinic took 15 minutes. Gray skies, wet roads, windshield wipers squeaking every few seconds. The whole city looked scrubbed and colorless. Lakeview Veterinary Clinic sat in a low beige building between a pharmacy and a physical therapy office, with painted paw prints on the window and a cheerful sign that felt almost insulting now. Through the glass, I could see pet carriers, potted plants, a rack of brochures about dental care for dogs and parasite prevention for indoor cats. Ordinary, bright, the kind of place that smells like disinfectant and fur and tries very hard to seem friendly. I walked in carrying no animal, no carrier, nothing but my bag, and attention so sharp it felt visible. The receptionist looked up with the same smile people use for owners arriving with nervous pets. It faded when she saw my empty hands. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I got a call this morning about confirming surgery for a cat named Mr. Biscuit," I said. "I'm Anna Vorontsova." Her eyes changed instantly. She knew. Not the whole story, maybe, but enough to recognize my name. "One moment," she said, and turned to her screen. Her nails clicked over the keyboard. Then she looked up again more carefully, studying my face like she was checking it against something she'd seen before. "Do you have ID?" I handed over my driver's license. She took it, looked at it, then at me, then back at the monitor. A second receptionist at the far end of the desk glanced over, sensing the shift in tone. "This is definitely the name on the chart," the first woman said. "Would you mind stepping into the consultation room for a moment? The office manager may need to speak with you." That sentence landed badly. Not because it was rude, but because it meant whatever was in their system looked serious enough not to discuss in the lobby. I followed her past the waiting area, past framed photos of dogs in bandanas and cats in little holiday collars, into a small room with 2 chairs, a metal exam table, and a laminated chart of feline anatomy on the wall. She closed the door behind me. A minute later, a woman in navy scrubs came in, older than the receptionist, calm-faced, managerial. She introduced herself as Dana, the office manager, and sat across from me with a tablet in her hand. I understand there's a concern about one of our patient files, she said. Concern. Such a small word for the thing moving under my ribs. I never created a patient file, I replied. That's the concern. Dana nodded slowly. All right, let's go step by step. The chart for Mr. Biscuit was created online 48 hours ago. The owner is listed as Anna Vorontsova. Your phone number is listed. Your email is listed. Your address is listed. There is also a digital intake form and a consent signature. She angled the tablet toward me. Do you recognize this? I looked at the screen. It was a standard veterinary intake form. Species, breed, age, sex, vaccination history, emergency contact. Orange tabby, male, estimated 1 year old. Name, Mr. Biscuit. Owner, Anna Vorontsova. Address, mine, email, mine. Emergency contact, blank. Then at the bottom, a signature, not my signature. Not even close, once I looked carefully, but the kind of imitation someone might make if they had seen my name written somewhere and only cared that it looked plausibly human. A tilt in the first letter. The wrong pressure on the last name. Sloppy confidence. That isn't mine, I said. Dana watched my face, not the tablet. Have you ever been to our clinic before? Never. Do you know anyone who might have access to your personal information? That question should have had an easy answer. Instead, my mind immediately started opening drawers I didn't want opened. Ex-boyfriend, landlord, former roommate, work records, package labels, family. The list was too long and too human. Too many people know my address, I said finally, but not many know my email and phone number together. Dana nodded once. There's one more thing, she said. Yesterday, someone called to confirm pre-op instructions verbally. My stomach tightened. From this number? Yes, I stared at her. That wasn't me. She turned the tablet back and checked a note. The caller was identified as the owner. She sounded calm. She asked whether the cat would need an overnight stay and whether there would be stitches visible afterward. I could hear the fluorescent lights humming in the room. Do you record calls? I asked. Dana hesitated. Not routinely, no. Of course not. That would have been too easy. Can I see who dropped the cat off before? I asked. Has the animal ever been in your clinic? Dana's eyes shifted slightly. Yes, she said. There was one prior visit. Vaccination consult 3 weeks ago. And who brought him? She was quiet for a second, measuring policy against instinct. Then she turned the tablet again. This is the intake photo attached to that earlier visit. It was grainy, clearly taken quickly at the front desk. A carrier on the floor, an orange cat inside, face half-turned, eyes enormous and irritated. Behind the carrier, the lower half of a person, jeans, dark coat, white sneakers, no face, no name tag, no miracle clue. Just enough to prove the cat existed. Mr. Biscuit was real, which somehow made it worse. That doesn't help, I said quietly. I know, Dana replied, but there is a note from that visit. The staff member wrote that the owner seemed nervous and declined to remove her mask fully for the camera when asked. My pulse kicked harder. Mask? Yes. 3 weeks ago, masks in public spaces weren't unusual enough to stand out, but in that moment, the note read like strategy, not caution. Do you have security cameras? I asked. In the lobby and reception area, yes. Can I see them? Not directly, Dana said. But if there's suspected fraud, we can preserve footage and release it to law enforcement. Law enforcement? The words made the whole thing step into a different category. Until then, some part of me had still been trying to make it smaller, stranger, but smaller. A prank, a clerical mess, some bizarre mix-up, but somebody had impersonated me in person, or at least using enough of me to create a credible file. Print everything, I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. The intake forms, the appointment times, the notes, all of it. I want copies. Dana nodded. We can do that. She stood and paused at the door. I'm going to ask one question that may sound odd. Have you noticed any signs that an animal has been in or around your home? I almost said no immediately. Then the question reached something in my memory and stayed there. Not signs of a cat exactly, but small things. Odd things. The faint smell of something unfamiliar in the hallway one night last week, sharp and slightly sour. A tiny scratch on the outside of my bathroom door I assumed came from my laundry basket scraping past. A rustling sound under the tub 2 nights ago that I had blamed on pipes because old buildings make every sound eventually, if you listen long enough. Dana was still watching me. "Why would you ask that?" I said. "Because the note about the bathtub is very specific," she replied, "and it's phrased like someone who has physically seen the cat in your bathroom." My skin went cold so fast it was almost painful. I didn't answer her. I couldn't. Because the thought had already arrived before I could stop it. What if there had been a cat in my apartment? What if this wasn't just identity fraud on paper? What if somebody had access to my place? Dana seemed to realize from my face alone that the room had changed. "Do you live alone?" she asked. "Yes. Has anyone else had keys?" "My super. My previous boyfriend, a long time ago. My sister once, but she gave hers back. At least she said she did." The office manager didn't overreact. That almost made it worse. "You should consider changing the locks," she said carefully. "And you may want to file a police report. We'll flag the account and cancel the surgery for now." "No," I said too quickly. She blinked. "No?" I took a breath, thought through the feeling. "Don't cancel it yet," I said. "Leave everything exactly as it is." Dana studied me with new attention. "Why?" "Because if whoever did this expects a call or expects to show up, I want them to keep moving as if nothing's wrong." She didn't answer for a moment, then a very slight nod. "All right, we can note the file and alert staff privately." "Good." She left to make the copies. I sat alone in the consultation room staring at the feline anatomy poster, trying to remember every odd detail from the past month. The scratch on the bathroom door, the smell in the hall. Once, coming home late, I'd thought I heard something knock lightly from inside the walls or under the floor, but old buildings talk to themselves all the time. A week ago, I'd found one of my dish towels on the bathroom floor and blamed myself for dropping it. 3 days ago, I'd woken at 2 a.m. because I was sure I heard a soft thump in the tub room, then found nothing when I checked. Nothing. That word had felt true then. It didn't anymore. Dana came back with a paper packet clipped together. Intake form, appointment confirmation, prior vaccination record, internal notes, timestamps. My name sat on each page like it belonged there. "We've also pulled the security timestamps from the prior visit and from the surgery booking," she said. "If police request footage, we'll release it." I flipped through the papers until I saw the earlier visit date. 3 weeks ago, Tuesday, 6:42 p.m. And suddenly I remembered exactly where I had been at 6:42 p.m. that Tuesday, at dinner with coworkers across town. I still had the receipt in my email because I'd submitted it for reimbursement. Whoever came in as me hadn't just used my information. They had chosen a time when I was publicly somewhere else, not random, planned. "Do you have the IP address from the online form?" I asked. Dana's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Possibly. I'd need to check with the software portal." "Check," she did. A few minutes later, she came back with another sheet. One IP tied to the initial form, another to an update made yesterday evening. I stared at the strings of numbers that meant nothing to me alone, but everything to someone who knew how to follow them. "Can you give me these too?" She handed them over. "Anna," she said more gently now, "I know this sounds obvious, but if you think someone has been in your home, don't go back there alone until you're sure." I almost told her I'd already left it alone this morning and was sitting in a veterinary office talking about a cat I didn't own. As if alone had already happened and failed to protect me. Instead, I just nodded, took the packet, and walked out. The parking lot smelled like wet asphalt. I stood beside my car with the papers in my hand and called my building superintendent first. No answer. Then I called the non-emergency police line. The dispatcher sounded tired until I explained why I was calling. "Someone opened a veterinary account in my name," I said, using my real address, real contact info, and apparently detailed knowledge of my bathroom. There may have been unauthorized access to my apartment. That changed her tone immediately. She asked for my address, whether I felt safe, whether I had returned home yet. I said no. She told me an officer could meet me there within the hour. I agreed. Then I sat in my car without starting it and did the one thing I hadn't wanted to do. I called my sister. We were close in the shallow, practical sense families can be when everyone is too busy and slightly too guarded. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, you okay?" I asked the question before answering hers. "Do you still have a copy of my apartment key?" Silence. Not confusion. Silence with shape. "Why?" she asked. My heart slowed in the way it only does when fear becomes certainty. "Because a vet clinic just called to confirm surgery for my cat," I said. "I've never owned a cat. They have my name, my email, my phone number, and notes saying the cat hides under my bathtub." The silence on the other end changed texture, became breathing. Then, too casually, "That's weird." I closed my eyes. "Lena." Another breath. "I don't have your key," she said. But the problem wasn't the words. It was how fast she said them. Too ready, too clean. "Did you give anyone my information?" I asked. "No." "Did you ever bring an animal into my apartment?" "What? Of course not." A sharpness entered her voice now, defensive in a way that didn't match the question. I leaned back against the headrest and stared at the wet blur of the windshield. "Then why do you sound scared?" I asked. She didn't answer. Then she said, quieter, "Anna, maybe you should calm down before you start accusing people." There it was. Not outrage, not confusion, deflection. "I didn't accuse you of anything," I said. "Yet." She inhaled through her nose the way she always did before lying. It was a tiny family detail, one of those things you only notice after years of shared rooms and bad holidays and too many half-truths. "I have to go," she said. "I'm at work." She hung up before I could stop her. I looked at the phone in my hand for a full 5 seconds, then called her back. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I drove home with the police report forms from dispatch echoing in my head and the vet packet on the passenger seat like proof that reality had slipped 1 inch to the left overnight. 2 officers met me outside my building, one older, one young enough to still look almost embarrassed at other people's messes. I explained everything in the parking lot first, then again in the hallway, then once more at my apartment door while the older officer took notes. They asked if anything looked disturbed. I said I didn't know yet. They asked if anyone had authorized access. I said not recently. When I unlocked the door and stepped inside, I felt a resistance I couldn't explain. Not physical, something emotional and animal, like the apartment wasn't mine in exactly the way it had been that morning. Everything looked normal. Couch, bookshelf, kitchen counter, mail where I left it. No overturned drawers, no missing electronics, no chaos dramatic enough to comfort me by being obvious. The younger officer checked the windows while the older one stayed with me as I walked through room by room. Then I reached the bathroom. The older officer stopped just outside the doorway while I looked in. On first glance, nothing. Sink, mirror, towel on the rack, shower curtain half open. Then I crouched slowly and looked under the tub. Something pale was stuck near the back leg. I reached for it and pulled out a small foil packet. Cat treats, tuna-flavored, unopened. My fingers went numb around it. The older officer took it from me carefully. "Did you buy this?" "No." He crouched and shined his flashlight further under the tub. A second later, his voice changed. "There's hair under here." Orange hair. Not much. Just a few strands caught in dust and cobwebs, but enough. Enough to tell a story that no longer sounded insane. The younger officer stepped in from the hallway. "Back bedroom windows secure," he said, then saw our faces and stopped. The older officer held up the packet. "Looks like there may actually have been a cat in here." The sentence was absurd in any normal context. In mine, it landed like a verdict. They photographed everything, the treats, the hair, the scratch marks low on the bathroom door I hadn't really seen until someone else pointed them out. Small, repeated. From inside or outside, it was hard to tell. The older officer asked whether any neighbor had a cat that could have gotten in accidentally. I said no one with a cat had access to my apartment. He didn't contradict me. Instead, he asked for names of anyone who'd ever had a key. I gave him my superintendent, my ex from over a year ago, and my sister. Writing Lena's name down made something settle into place that I didn't want settled. They advised me to change the locks immediately and file the vet documents with the report. They also suggested I ask the clinic to preserve all digital records. Before they left, the younger officer turned at the door and said, "Ma'am, one more thing. If someone used your apartment to keep an animal without your knowledge, it usually means they expected access to continue. Continue. Not just a past intrusion, an ongoing one." After they left, the apartment felt too quiet to think in. I called a locksmith. He said he could come in 40 minutes. While I waited, I started checking places I normally wouldn't. The hall closet, under the sink, top shelf in the coat cupboard, behind the hamper. Nothing for a while except normal life, ordinary dust and receipts and cleaning supplies. Then, in the cabinet above the refrigerator, behind a stack of takeout menus I never used, I found a small zip bag with 3 disposable feeding bowls and a folded receipt from a pet supply store 10 minutes away. Date, 6 days earlier. Cash purchase, cat litter, wet food, travel carrier liner, toy mouse. I sat down hard at the kitchen table with the receipt in my hand. Someone had been in my home often enough to hide supplies where I wouldn't notice them quickly. Not once, repeatedly. The locksmith arrived and changed both locks while I stood nearby pretending my hands weren't shaking. He asked if I'd been broken into. I said, something like that. After he left, I called the pet store. The manager said they couldn't identify a cash customer from the receipt alone, but there were cameras and they could preserve footage if law enforcement requested it. That made 3 places with cameras now. The clinic, the pet supply store, my building lobby maybe if the super hadn't overwritten everything already. I called the superintendent again and got him this time. He sounded annoyed until I mentioned police. Then he became instantly helpful. Yes, there were cameras in the lobby and at both entrances. Yes, he could preserve footage for the last 30 days. No, he had not entered my apartment recently. Had he let anyone else in? A pause. Not that I recall. Not that I recall is what people say when recall would be inconvenient. Did my sister ever ask to be let in? I asked. I'm not comfortable discussing tenant access without... There's a police report now, I said. So get comfortable. Another pause. She came by once, he admitted. Said she was checking on your place while you were out. My vision seemed to sharpen around the edges. When? A few weeks ago. Maybe more than once. I thought she had permission. I thanked him in a voice that no longer sounded like mine and hung up. Then I called Lena again. This time she answered on the 3rd ring, and before she could say hello, I said, "The super let you into my apartment." Silence. Then, "Anna, listen." "No, you listen." There were cat treats under my bathtub, supplies hidden above my fridge, a veterinary file in my name, so you're going to tell me exactly what you did. She exhaled shakily. It wasn't what you think. People only say that when it is exactly what you think and worse. Then explain it. She was crying by the time she started. Real crying or good imitation, I couldn't tell yet. "It's not my cat," she said. "It's Nate's. Nate, her boyfriend on and off for 2 years, the kind of man who always had a temporary problem that somehow required permanent rescue from everyone around him. Bad job, bad landlord, bad luck, bad timing. Always a story, never a solution." "What does Nate have to do with my apartment?" "His lease doesn't allow pets," she said quickly. "And the kitten was supposed to be temporary. Someone left him with Nate and he couldn't keep him at his place, and I didn't know what else to do." I laughed then, once, and it was uglier than before. "So you put a cat in my bathroom?" "Only when you were at work," she said, as if the sentence could possibly improve from there. "I went in during the day. He was quiet most of the time. I fed him and cleaned up, and I thought it would only be for a few days." I stood up so fast the chair legs scraped hard against the floor. "You thought wrong." She started talking faster, panic opening all the seams in her voice. I was going to tell you, I just needed a little time. Then he got sick, or maybe stressed, I don't know, and Nate freaked out and made the appointment. He used your info because we couldn't use his in case the landlord found out. There it was. Not identity theft for money, not some stranger wearing my life like a mask for sport, something smaller, meaner, more intimate. The casual theft family commits when they decide your boundaries aren't real because you're related. You forged my signature, I said. I didn't sign anything, she whispered. Nate did the online stuff. Using my name, my address, my email. She didn't deny it. I was going to fix it. How? I asked. By removing the cat before I noticed he existed? She was sobbing openly now. Please don't call the police on him. Him? Of course, not me, not what they'd done, not the invasion of my home. Him. You used my apartment as a secret kennel, I said. You let your boyfriend impersonate me. You put an animal under my bathtub in my own home without telling me, and you're asking me not to call the police on him? He was desperate. So am I said. I'm desperate to understand how my own sister decided I wouldn't mind living with a hidden cat. That shut her up for a second. Then came the line I knew was coming. You never use the bathroom during the day. The sheer ugliness of that logic took the air out of me. She had reduced my home to a schedule gap, a space she could borrow because I wasn't visibly occupying it at every hour. Don't come here, I said. Don't call me again until I tell you to. Anna, I hung up. Then I sat back down and cried for exactly 30 seconds, not because I was heartbroken, but because fury needed somewhere to go before it turned into something useless. Then I stopped. I called the officers back, updated the report, gave them Nate's full name and Lena's statement as best as I could reconstruct it. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I said I wanted everything documented first. Then I called the clinic and told Dana what I'd learned. She was quiet the entire time, then said, We'll cancel the surgery and mark the account as fraudulent use of identity. If officers contact us, we'll cooperate fully. I thanked her. Then I did one last thing. I went into the bathroom, crouched beside the tub, and shined my phone light underneath. No cat, no movement, just dust, hair, and the dark, hollow space where something living had apparently been while I slept in the next room, made coffee, answered work calls, and believed my home was mine because the lock turned when I asked it to. That was the worst part, in the end. Not the clinic call, not even the forged forms. It was the realization that trespass doesn't always arrive as violence. Sometimes it arrives as permission you never gave, taken by people who think love excuses access. Over the next week, the footage was preserved, statements were taken, and the whole stupid, humiliating story became paperwork. The clinic had clear images of a masked woman whose build matched my sister and a man in a cap they believed was Nate. The pet store footage showed the same man,